This episode of The Clear Out was recorded on the 28th of November 2023 at home in Wicklow. And it is an episode that focuses mostly on the riots and in Dublin last week and the inciting incident that led to those riots. And I try to discuss it with a kind of a broader look at who may have influenced those riots and why the conditions for those riots were so primed for that expression of anger and rage. And I also include part of a clip from an Instagram comedian / musician who spoke so articulately about the situation that I felt it was well worth sharing, and I give you all the information about that in the episode so you can go and find it for yourself. But that's it. So that's what's coming up. A bit of a very Irish focused and looking at themes of nationalism and immigration and male anger and far right provocation. So if that sounds like your bag, tune in and enjoy. I'll see you around the corner. Cheers.
Ooh, not gonna change my mind, leaving the dream behind, keep my moji inside.
Hi, my name is Dara Clear and you're listening to The Clear Out. You're very welcome. Thank you for choosing this podcast to listen to among the many others you could have chosen. I welcome your decision with great enthusiasm and relief. Oh my goodness, I'm holding a hot mug of cinnamon tea with some honey in it. I was in the sea about 2 hours ago and I'm still just a little bit, I can feel my feet are still cold. It was cold this morning. I had a beautiful walk with Pepper, the dog, at about 6:30. I had a walk in the woods and the light from the moon, I don't know if it was full last night or the previous night, but the light from the moon was so fantastic that I didn't need to turn on the head torch. So it's just this moonlit early morning walk, which was fantastic. I got my daughter to school and she asked to be driven to school today, and I decided, okay, it'll actually suit me to drop her off and head to the coast for a swim, so I can get on with the rest of my day. So the car said the temperature was 1.5 degrees outside. It hadn't felt that cold when I was walking earlier, probably because I was walking. And the sea temperature allegedly was 11.8 according to the website I use. I'm never entirely sure about that, but it was noticeably warmer in the water than on the land. Well, when you're standing in a pair of Speedos. But just another one of these great November days. I'm beginning to think, for the first time in my life, I realise November might be my favourite month of the year. I'm a big fan of January because January is my birthday month. Hint, hint. Send your knickers. Sorry, I won't go there. I like January because it's my birthday month. I like the beginning of the year. I like that midwinter challenge. And I like sort of steeling myself in that, those cold midwinter days. But November is really just an aesthetic, thrill. Certainly where we live down in Wicklow, it's just been absolutely gorgeous. And it was a drier month than October, so we've had so many good dry days, particularly in the last couple of weeks. Some really drab ones as well, but the bright days when the leaves were just fantastic. You noticed last week I didn't talk about the leaves because I think they just peaked, and now, yeah, those autumn colours are pretty much gone, as it should be, considering it's almost at the very end of November. But yeah, a lovely swim this morning. But of course, as the temperature drops in the water, it does take that much longer to warm up and recover afterwards. So hence the mug of tea in the hand. So what, where, who? I had my first receptive mindfulness class last week at the Irish Museum of Modern Art at Camerino Bakery there, and I had a few bodies, which was nice, and we had a good time, and they left happy. They left energized and buzzed and feeling calmer. And it was funny, somebody commented, I felt kind of cold at the end of the class, and they were all saying how warm they felt. And one of the participants was saying, that's because you gave all your energy to us. I don't know. I think I was actually a bit nervous. It's funny. I've taught so much over the years, but I felt a bit nervous with this one. It was my first time to deliver that type of stuff under that name, and I just felt a bit of pressure. So I think at the initial part of the class I was actually sweating, just that nervous sweat, and then I was fine, but then I probably cooled down with the sweat on me, which was the reason. Anyway, so be it. So listen, today's class, the receptive mind class is continuing. So that's, if you're someone who's in the Dublin area or reasonably close and feels like coming in, by the time this comes out on Thursday, there'll be 3 Wednesdays left. That would be the 6th, the 13th and the 20th of December. 3 more Wednesdays at Camerino Bakery at the Irish Museum of Modern Art in Kilmainham. And I'm very confident that if you came in, you'd get a lot out of it and sort of float out of there feeling really good. And strangely, it would be a grounded floating. So rather than a sense of I can't keep myself on the ground, I'm floating away, just a lovely lightened energy, radiant. That's why I do it, because I believe in it and I see the effect it has on people who have come to get that type of thing from me over the years. It really works. Okay, so that's all about that. If I was going to give my Patreon spruik. Do you know that word? Spruik. I only came across that word in Australia. To spruik something is to promote it, to try and sell it. So I was going to spruik my Patreon link, patreon.com/the clear out. If you enjoy this thing that I do, this thing I do on the tell, this engagement with well-being, with wellness, with mental health, with vulnerability, with all kinds of issues, psychological, emotional well-being, and many other things. If you like it and think, do you know what? That represents someone's effort, someone's work, and it's a good thing and it makes me feel better, do consider becoming a friend of the show using the Patreon link, where for the price of a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a sandwich, a pint, whatever symbolic currency resonates with you, you can do that there and endorse what I do here and validate it. And yeah, it means a lot to me. So consider that if you will. And if you're not in a position to do that, no stress. You can also support me just by spreading the love, spreading the word, sharing thoughts, comments, reactions, and bumping it onto other people, leaving reviews, rating it, subscribing to the show. All that really, really helps. Just raise the profile a little bit more. And further to that, I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks my rebooted, revamped website will be live. My good friend Daniel has been working really hard on it over the last several months. It's been a work in progress. At different times we've both been too busy to give it the love it needed. Daniel's a great guy from Colombia. He was living in Australia, and he was a student of mine in Melbourne several years ago, but a really, really good guy. And he got on board very early with the podcast and said he'd like to be involved in helping build a profile and build a site. So after 2.5 years, we're nearly ready to do that. So I was reaching out to some people who I know listen fairly regularly to the show. I was just looking for some reviews, feedback, testimonials, whatever you want to call it. And I got some really, really nice stuff from some good people. So some things I may end up putting up on the website, just in my shop window, so to speak. But I also got, can you pick it up a bit? Can you stop rambling? Can you get to the point? Have you heard of concision? So now you remember last week I was trying to put out a shorter episode, and I'm robust enough that I can hear constructive criticism, I can hear criticism, and I can step outside my own ego and sensitivity and just look at it and consider it. And so today's episode, I am genuinely going to try and keep this shorter than I have done for a very long time. So we'll see if I can achieve that. It's to demonstrate to you and to myself that I'm not afraid of trying something different. My wife would balk at that suggestion. The very idea that I'm able to change, she'd be like, I don't think so. Anyway, let's see what happens. Let's see what unfolds over the next half an hour or 40 minutes. And if I kept it to 40 minutes, that would be a shorter episode. Okay, so that's it. That's the preamble. Now, on to much more serious things. My friend Connor, another Australian mate, former colleague. Connor's over in the UK, as many people like to call it, the UK. The UK, in a B place. Is it Birmingham? Is it Bristol? I can't remember. Anyway, Connor, if you're listening, hello, my friend. Connor was asking me to share some thoughts on what transpired in Dublin last week. So if you haven't been following, there was a really brutal, a really horrific, shocking knife attack on school children in the middle of the day in Dublin last Thursday. One adult was attacked as well, and the attack was committed by a non-Irish person, a person who's a naturalised Irish citizen who's been in Ireland for around 20 years, I believe. He's from Algeria originally, and he was the attacker. And it sparked, with, I believe, the encouragement of far-right elements, it sparked a demonstration which erupted into a riot and scenes of kind of mass destruction in the centre of Dublin city last Thursday, night. And yeah, it was pretty. I mean, the first horrible thing, of course, was the attack. The thought of little children. These kids were only 5 or 6 years old, being stabbed by a grown man, a man in his 50s, I believe. That is almost unconscionable, and I say that as this ongoing crisis rolls out in the Middle East. Although there has been a ceasefire, thankfully, lately. You think of the amount of victims there have been of bombings, etc. in Gaza. Absolutely horrible stuff. But I suppose on a level we contextualise that and put it into a larger picture of war, of conflict, of fanaticism, extreme aggression, I mean, I've touched on this in previous episodes. But when it's an individual, it's more vivid in a way and feels more immediate. And of course it feels more immediate here in Ireland when you're in Ireland and it happens on your doorstep, as Dublin is to Wicklow. I mean, my first reaction to the attack was an assumption of extreme mental and emotional unwellness, psychological disarray, someone having a psychic break. I didn't think a terror attack. I think at the time I didn't know it wasn't an Irish person. But, I mean, I'll just throw in straight away, you know, acts of violence in Ireland against children and women. Anecdotally, my assumption is that many of the perpetrators of those attacks are Irish people and Irish men, unfortunately. So I wouldn't, you know, my brain wouldn't attach that type of attack to anything other than, oh, this might be, you know, a family situation. It might be a father who's been denied access to his children, or I don't know. Those were the scenarios that came into my head. An alienated father, a father with a barring order. That was my assumption initially. I have no other information at this point. I've been busy, and I mean, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I don't pursue these stories. I don't pursue more information. I feel very aware that there's a lot of really confronting, horrible stuff in the world, and it's all out there. It's out there for us every second of the day. And I think part of the broader malaise that is afflicting so many of us in the world is connected to our access to these stories, our access to reaction. The 24-hour news cycle, but it's the social media cycle, it's the opinion cycle, and there's so much stuff that's so emotive and provocative and inflammatory, and I'm extremely suspicious of it, and I have a strong aversion to it. Not fear, not a disproportionate misreading of all of that. I just trust my instinct that this is like it's unsafe, and I don't trust that there aren't a lot of bad actors behind various sources, and that is very much how I view what would have led to the riots on Thursday in Dublin. That there are bad actors, and I've made the joke before. I'm not talking about people like me, bad actors who didn't, manage to sustain a successful acting career. But people who are acting in bad faith, cynical people who are manipulating those who are there to be manipulated. And this is, I believe, an ongoing trend that's been happening across the world for at least the last 10 or 15 years, if not more. We've had the very obvious rise of populist strongman leaders in various parts of the world, the likes of Trump, the likes of Bolsonaro, the likes of Duterte in the Philippines, and there's others I can't think of right now. But I do think of people like Nigel Farage, particularly, people like Boris Johnson, these kind of slippery, deceptive, disingenuous actors who are really just serving their own sense of personal glory, pushing their own personal agenda. Like those two examples in particular, like they're just such, stereotypical value vacuums morality vacuums. They're just blowing with the wind, and a bit like Trump. I think they just have a nose for chaos. They have a nose for the fault line, and Farage in particular. There's somebody else I'm missing in this group, but Farage in particular, the way he manipulated the narrative, for want of a better word, around Brexit, and the way the Tories kind of leaned into that. They're just vile, these people. I have no time for them at all. They represent nothing good. However, they, as I said already, they have a nose for where people are feeling a bit crazy, for where people are feeling really angry, really shut out, let down, disenfranchised, left behind, and they have a great knack for channeling that profound sense of social rejection and social hurt. And they have a great knack for channeling that very real emotion, that very real wound, into destructive iteration and enactment of hatred, of xenophobia, and it's really horrible stuff. And once again, we're suffering from a lack of more inspiring leaders. We're suffering from a lack of leadership that appeals to people's, the phrase I want to use is they're better angels. I know that's a bit of a wet phrase. It's a little bit sentimental. But, well, this is my fundamental belief. I think we all have the capacity to remain positive, to remain hopeful, to remain generous in how we think of others, to remain connected to notions of altruism and selflessness, to be civic-minded, to be community-minded, to be able to absorb our own hurts and wounds without shifting the energy to others, without shifting the blame or projecting onto others. I believe we all have the capacity to manage ourselves and stay connected to a better version of what our society can be, or what our community can be, what our country can be. And when I looked at the images of these, what I took to be largely young men, hooded, masked, rioting in the centre of Dublin, attacking police, setting police cars on fire, setting public transport vehicles on fire, and then smashing shop windows and looting. My initial reaction was one of disgust, of anger, and yes, of judgment. Like, very simply, to just kind of judge these guys and go, what the hell are you doing? This is just disgusting behaviour. It's the lowest form of criminal activity. Violence, destruction of property, vandalism, stealing. And, theoretically, this was a demonstration of national pride. Like, ostensibly, this was a demonstration of national pride. And I saw some clips on social media from people's social media feeds of the actual riots, and you'd see comments going, the fighting Irish are back, and go on the boys, and these kind of dubious sort of pieces of rhetoric that had vaguely, political overtones, or were explicitly political and, celebratory in tone, as if this was a great moral victory for the people. But fundamentally, this was, driven by far-right elements, framed as anti-immigrant, as an anti-immigrant demonstration, as an anti-immigrant protest. And the immigrant in choice in question, of course, was this perpetrator of the knife attack. And what resulted was just a gang of young guys wrecking a section of the centre of Dublin, and all it looked like was a big pylon. It just looked like here's an opportunity for us to go mental. Here's an opportunity for us to act with impunity. And I always feel like when these guys rock up and they're obscuring their identities, they're covering their faces with scarves, their hoods are up, to me it immediately detracts from their legitimacy. Because if they had a legitimate complaint, if they really truly felt this is the righteous cause, I don't think there'd be any reason for them to hide their faces. I think they could stand there with pride and protest in the way they saw fit, because it would be aligned to a true conviction, that this was justified behaviour. But what it just looked like was extreme anti-social behaviour, not anti-socialism, but anti-social behaviour, wanton destruction just for the sake of it. And the looting just coloured that even more. And I tell you, I was looking at something last night. I was just scrolling online and I came across an Instagram account that I follow, and the Instagram account belongs to a guy called Garron Noone, and I mean, his videos, his most popular videos just seem to be him being extremely funny. He's a funny guy, and he points out all sorts of ridiculous things, about Irish culture, about food. There's a lot of food themed stuff, and he's outraged and indignant. He's very funny, and he came up on my feed a few months ago, and I started following him. He was making me laugh. Young guy. I'm not sure where he's from. He's got a very distinctive voice, and his catchphrase is "Follow me, I'm delicious." And he's also a very talented musician and singer. So again, like, just this is the modern age and the social media age. It's TikTok, it's whatever, and there are a lot of talented people out there. And I've seen a handful of younger Irish. I'm hesitating to use the word comedians, but I guess that's what they are. They're just they do skits and sketches and funny videos, and they gain purchase, and they're doing well. And I follow a few of them, and they make me laugh. I don't watch every single thing they do. But in any case, I was looking at Garron's Instagram feed last night, and he put up a video simply called "The Situation in Ireland." And he was so articulate and considered and thoughtful and balanced in his assessment of the situation last week, that I wasn't blown away, but I was very moved by what he was saying, and it resonated. It felt very authentic, and it felt to me like a really great read of the situation. So I'm going to just play you a bit of the clip right now, But I recommend you go and find it yourself on Instagram. His Instagram name is Garron, Garron _music. So Garron _music. And just find the video. It's one of his most recent ones, and it just has the caption, "The Situation in Ireland." I recommend you go and listen to the full thing yourself. I won't play the whole thing. I'll just play the start of it. I'll just play the first couple of minutes of it, and you can just get a flavour.
Hello, how are you getting on? I don't really do serious videos or political videos or anything like that on my page. I like to keep it light-hearted. I think there's value in keeping things light-hearted and not talking about what's going on in the world all the time. And who the fuck cares what I think anyway? I talk about, spice bags and, horseshit. I don't have an interest in or important opinion about anything. But it didn't feel right not mentioning what happened in Ireland last week here. So first of all, 3 children as well as an adult were brutally attacked in broad daylight in Dublin by a man in his 50s. The man is originally from Algeria. It seems like he's lived here for around 20 years. He's had previous interactions with the guards with stuff regarding knives, but it's not known exactly what seems to have triggered that particular attack. I think we all as a country obviously really want all of those people to make a full physical recovery and also to recover as best they can from the extreme trauma of what they've experienced as well. And things like that really shouldn't happen in Ireland. They don't happen in Ireland. The fact that the man is not from Ireland originally has unearthed a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment, which led to what happened later in the day. But before I talk about that, I just want to say there are people saying, this is what happens when we let X and Y, whoever it might be, into the country. There's people who are saying it doesn't matter at all that he's an immigrant. My own personal opinion is that what matters is to look at every event in that particular man's life that led up to that point and see at what points we could have intervened to do something better from when he entered the country through the systems that he obviously went through in the country. Could this have been caught? Every element of this man's life is important to look into. Now on to the riot. I think it's important to say that I don't think that the people who were rioting in Dublin were positively motivated to improve the country. I think the people who were breaking into shops and stealing shoes weren't stealing the shoes thinking, I'm doing this for Ireland. I don't think the people who were burning down buses or assaulting guards or whatever it might be, I think they found a scapegoat to do whatever the fuck they felt like doing, and I think they made an absolute mockery out of our capital city and out of a country that I myself, and I know everybody else, is very proud to be from, and we consider ourselves a very peaceful and accepting country. Now, most people in Ireland did not support the riots at all, but there was a lot of support for a lot of the sentiments that were expressed to justify the riots. One of them being an anti-immigrant sentiment. I think another thing underpinning all this is we've just had the recent conclusion of the Aisling Murphy trial as well. Aisling Murphy was, if you're not from Ireland, it was one of the most high-profile, shocking crimes that's ever taken place here. Young teacher murdered in the middle of the day in broad daylight. And the man who committed that crime also was not originally from Ireland. So there are certain groups of people who are connecting the dots of those two horrific crimes, as well as other incidents, and saying this is what Ireland is becoming now. Things are getting more violent since we've started letting people in. We can't house these people. We're struggling to even house Irish people, and that's basically the line. Now, the really dangerous thing about that is nested in some of what they're saying is a little bit of the truth.
Okay, so look, that's a very good, as I said, flavour of what Garron was speaking about on his own feed last night. And he goes on and really sort of explores the tension that is underneath the riots last week. and repeating what I was saying before I played you the clip, the idea that there are people who have genuine grievances. There are people, many people in Ireland and in a lot of other countries around the world currently, I think, who feel that they've been shut out and left behind. These are phrases I used before. The sense of we're stuck where we are and nobody cares. And then these other elements get their stick and they kind of poke that feeling of being forgotten, that feeling of being cast aside, and they hold up a sign or they hold up a photo or they hold up a fact in inverted commas and go, look, you can't get anything, but look what they're doing for this family that just landed from, I don't know where, Nigeria or Romania or Algeria, or this family of refugees from Ukraine. And the sense that they're not being cared for by their own government, their own people, so to speak. That is a real feeling. That is a real grievance. That's not imagined. It's not fabricated. And again, I'm no sociologist, but there are always areas of large populations that are given less love financially, economically, politically, culturally than other areas. And typically these are areas that are often on the fringes of larger populations, or they're in areas that have generationally been underserviced, neglected. They might be architecturally and sort of civically less attractive. They might have been more pragmatic in their establishment, or more utilitarian when they first came about. But over time, the feeling of being unloved, the feeling of being neglected, it calcifies. It calcifies into something else, and it calcifies into resentment. It calcifies into a hardness. It calcifies into aggression, and the aggression and anger craves an outlet. And within those communities, I think there's a sort of there's a leveling out where, and again, I'm trying to kind of choose my words carefully, because I don't want to sound like I'm being classist or being a snob in any way. I'm trying to look at this dispassionately and call a spade, for want of a better expression. But I think that there's a sort of a law of the jungle sensibility that prevails, and I think people can survive very well in those communities and live good lives, and have done always, because this is what people do. But there is a toughness, there is a sort of a hardening, and I think a sort of a callous that can come over a more generous outlook, and those communities can get very sort of inward looking, that we'll look after ourselves because no one else is looking after us. And in those environments, criminality can thrive, loan sharking can thrive, protection rackets can thrive. It becomes its own sort of guerrilla state in a way. where maybe police don't really want to go. You would have heard Garron refer a few times there to guards. So if you're a non-Irish listener, the police in Ireland are called guards. From the Irish language, the Garda Síochána, guardians of the peace, is basically how it translates. So, this is a real thing. These are real places. And I think when people, come out of those areas, they have a sense of the rest of their, the neighbouring community, the neighbouring population being a lot softer, a lot more open, a lot more vulnerable in a way. And I think the assumption is, or the projection is that, they're living easier lives. They're living easier, more comfortable lives than us, and they're getting love from the rest of the country, and they're getting care from the government, and they're getting attention from the politicians, because there's value in these other members of our country, the other members of our community, of the population, and we're not valued. And then you throw in the toxic idea of, the immigrant problem, again, inverted commas, and that being kind of, almost being used as a stick to taunt them. You're not even, even these people from the far reaches of the globe get more love than you. There's more political value and cultural value in these people. And I think there's a sense of indignation that again can be fueled into an explosive rage. And I think the riots last Thursday are an indication. They're an expression of that rage. They're an expression of that sense of neglect. They're an expression of that sense of not being cared for. And as Garron said in his video, I don't think those guys were thinking, as he said so sort of incisively, I don't think they were doing it for Ireland. I'm burning out this double-decker public transport bus for Ireland. I'm setting fire to this police car for Ireland. I'm smashing the window of this department store and walking out of here with jackets and shoes. I'm doing this because I love my country. And there's a disconnect then, and it's easy to clutch our pearls and be offended, as I felt last week. I was like, it's something that it just made me angry seeing that destruction. I'm going, like, I love Dublin. I love Dublin as a city. I've spent a lot of time there. I still go in and out of Dublin, and I'm doing some ongoing youth work with some great young guys on the north side of Dublin who may come from communities that are typically not viewed particularly favourably. And this is something we were talking about last week. And, the young guys that I'm working with have a very strong sense of their identity and of their community, and they've got pride in where they're from. But they definitely have a sense of, being othered. And so that indicates that there hasn't really been much change. But like I was discussing this with friends at the weekend. I was on a Zoom call with some great pals who are, thoughtful guys who, think about, geopolitics, politics, socioeconomics, whatever, as well as being great guys, thoughtful, reflective, people. Shout out to Tim and Dave if you're listening. And I was tired when we were talking, and we were talking about this situation as it had transpired in Dublin, and I really just didn't have a head on to talk about it in a thoughtful way. I think I was still feeling quite emotional about it. It was only a couple of nights after the riots, and the guys were sort of coming at me with political arguments and extrapolating quite extreme comparisons in terms of how mass immigration can alter a country And and they were coming from a very objective place. They weren't trying to provoke me. They weren't trying to advocate any type of ultra-nationalism. But yeah, I wasn't in a very receiving state of mind for that. So we moved on. But there is a question of resources. There is a question of the idea of enough, and it does feel at times like there should be enough. There should be enough in a country the size of Ireland to, and again, this is a very socialist position, but there should be enough financially, economically in Ireland to ensure a basic standard of living isn't fallen below, that people don't drop below a basic, decent standard of living. And sometimes people say things like that. Well, sure, look, aren't you lucky to have a house at all? Aren't you lucky to have a roof over your head? And it could be the poxiest, roughest place that they wouldn't consider setting foot in themselves. But there's this strange thing that happens in people's minds that, if something is given to someone, they should be happy for it to be anything at all. For something to be provided, they should just say thanks very much and be grateful, and not have the temerity to go, well, is there any chance I could have a place that's not falling apart with damp? Is it, would it be all right to have a place that's actually warm and insulated and truly habitable, that gives me a sense of pride when I close my door and stay inside and raise my family in this place? And if the answer to that question is no, it's not all right, just take what you get and be grateful and don't come begging again, that's a failure. Like, it's a failure of the state, and it's a failure of the country. And I'm not for a millisecond trying to say that's how everybody lives in these areas or suburbs or communities that feel disenfranchised, that are lower down the socio-economic pecking order, that are not as affluent. I'm not trying to suggest that, because people find a way and people do well and people live good lives and there are great people in these communities. But still, there's something wrong when you have a gang of young men ripping a city apart from seemingly nowhere. That is indicating unwellness. That is an indication of there's something really wrong here. And how can it be that these guys feel so little, so little sort of affirming love in their lives, that this feels like a good option to tear the streets apart. And I don't know if that's immediate love from family members. I don't know if it's immediate love from community leaders, if it's love from the state, if it's love from the country. And love may feel like an inappropriate word here, but I don't know. I come back to the idea of, institutions. Institutions are sort of in loco parentis. Institutions like education, institutions like, your health sector, the various arms of the government. These are institutions. These are the things that we try to build our society on. And they are the instruments of care for the citizens of a country. And if those institutions are failing, it's the equivalent to parental failing. Now, you might argue, well, look, we don't want a nanny state. You don't want the government involved in every aspect of our lives. I'm not arguing for that, but there are fundamentals. And housing, education and healthcare are fundamentals. And there's enormous pride in having a home. There's enormous pride in having a good education. There's pride in being able to afford healthcare for yourself, for your family. And there's pride in coming from an area that reflects outwards the care that it has been given and the care it gives itself. And I think when there's a loss of pride, that can manifest in different ways. It can manifest in depression. It can manifest in sort of surrender and resignation. But it can also manifest itself in indignation, in a sense that my pride has either not been given to me or my pride has been stolen from me. And there's an indignity in how I've been forced to live. And they're very powerful emotions. And if that's provoked, and if those emotions are located in young men in particular, who are immature, who are inexperienced, who are still not fully in control of, who they are, they're not fully in control of their, emotional impulses. They are being maybe programmed by what they consume on a daily basis all around them online. And again, these bad actors come in and go, yeah, we'll stir these guys up. And believe me, well, what am I saying? I mean, I don't need you to I don't need to convince you, surely. But young men the world over are the instruments of violence. I guarantee that they are manipulated, they are agitated, they are radicalized and fanaticized in different ways by other young men. I don't think so. Older men, cynical men who have, I don't know. I mean, it's not for me. I mean, I don't know what that psychological makeup is. But these are people who manipulate young men into this type of activity, this type of violence, this type of expression of their rage, this type of expression of their wound and their sense of loss. And I don't know how to address that. And so it's just as well that I'm not in a position of influence or power. But it's something I think about. And I have expressed that idea before, the idea of creating a space where, people can feel safe, where people can feel heard, where people can feel that they're not being judged. And I'm not sure what that space looks like. I mean, in a way, what I do on this podcast is trying to contribute to that, by expressing, ideas like I just expressed. But I was trying to think of those young guys last week, and I was thinking of them, well, if this was a kid, if this was my daughter acting out, smashing things, I don't think my impulse would be to be angry with her. I don't think I'd be judging her. I think I'd just be concerned and go, why is she feeling that way? What's made her so angry? What's made her feel like she wants to lash out and destroy things? And it's very self-harming. It's a very self-harming impulse to wreck things that are yours. And like these were Dublin guys last week. And I keep saying young guys. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the age profile was, but looking at them, it's like, the energy, the body movements, the body language was of young men, like teenagers, maybe guys in their 20s. And of course, that's the age range when young men take most risks, when they're willing to push the boundaries further than at any other point in their lives, when the brain is still developing, and when they have little or no care for their own health and safety because they feel, I'm going to live forever. But it's taken me, the 4 or 5 days since to access my compassion for those guys, because I think if you're looking down, with a parental gaze, you view that very differently. And I think I prefer to be in that sort of space of thinking, those guys are, they're my brothers in a way. Just like, and that's the sense of community. Like, that's the sense of, hold on, these aren't disconnected from me. They live in this country. They live just up the road in a way. And they're the residents of a city I love very much, and feel a strong connection to. So I don't know. I think, I was disgusted by their behaviour. I was disgusted by that riot, and particularly disgusted if it's fueled by a sense of national indignation, rather than something much smaller than that and much more local. But that it was sort of done in the name of Irish pride. I reject that idea, and in a way, it's letting the government off the hook, by allowing it to be kind of focused on anti-immigrant sentiment. And maybe there are cynical people in government who go, this is okay. It's better that they're directing their anger at non-Irish people than directing it at us for continuing to fail to lift them up in their own communities. I don't know. Okay, look, I am going to leave it there. Do go and check out Garron _music on Instagram. I'm sure he must be on TikTok as well. He's doing very well from a social media point of view. But if you only look at that one video, that's all you need to. He really expressed it far more articulately than I have. I mean, I like to go to the areas I like to go to, and consider it, in a broader sort of psychological, emotional, point of reference. But the way he articulated really, really calmly, really thoughtfully, with great kind of consideration and fairness, I felt, made him really well worth listening to. So fair play to him. And depending on your where your funny bone is located, you could well enjoy a lot of his other clips as well. Okay, that's me. I've landed just under an hour. It'll probably, with my intro, it might make the hour mark. But that is a shorter episode. I am capable of change. I'm living proof. Okay, that's it. Take care. Mind yourselves. And I will talk to you next week. I'll be back with something different. December next week. Typically I've done sort of Christmas themed episodes. We'll see. Okay, mind yourselves. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you next week. See ya. Bye.